Hello and welcome back to our podcast here at Manor Park Classics. And unusually today, I'm joined by someone that isn't contractually obliged to be here. Someone that I found on the streets, dragged in to talk absolute rubbish about cars. So this is Connor Heath, who is serial cross-continental charity-run breakdown specialist.
Serial would be, I've got an 100% failure rate.
100% failure rate.
Break down once.
Cross-continental charity
runs. And that's maybe
runs.
quite famous for breaking down.
Czech on a Trek.
Yeah.
Part of Dash to Dubrovnik, which I always fail to say.
Yeah.
Also works in the auto industry and is Amateur Photographer of the Year 2023.
Yeah.
So, as I said, I've dragged him along today to just talk rubbish about cars.
Yeah.
And finally, I have a guest that is not contractually obliged to be here, so actually is here because they want to talk to me.
Sure.
If you like. Okay. Reply to Instagram
you can
stories
convince
saying,
yourself.
Anyone want to come to guest on the podcast? And you're like, yeah, okay, I'll come.
Go on,
yeah, you're the first one to do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, either that proves your desire to get here or it proves my lack of desirability in attracting any guests to come here. But today, we're going to talk Czech on a Trek, at least in this first podcast. Yeah. So, barring the fact that we've sat here for nearly 2 hours.
Just waffling about
well,
cars.
over an hour in your case, just waffling about cars before hitting record on the podcast. Can you explain to us a little, very quickly, what is, first of all, Dash to Dubrovnik?
Yes, so Dash to Dubrovnik is a student road trip that runs every year from, believe it or not, the UK to Dubrovnik.
Who'd have thought it?
I know. It's a crafty name, it explains it all. And yeah, me and someone I go to uni with decided to... We sat on a leaflet while waiting for a cab or a lift or something, and just went, make a funny holiday.
You thought it might be fun just to go to Dubrovnik, buy a car, and just have a holiday.
Yeah,
really.
And so, really, I think it was probably my excuse to just buy another car.
Yeah, of course it's your excuse. As if you ever need more than an excuse for doing that.
So, we ended up, it was last year, we ended up buying a car and drove some way in that car. And then got stuck because the clutch cable snapped. And it's amazing how hard it is to get clutch cables for really niche 90s Czech hatchbacks.
But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Yeah. So, Dash to Dubrovnik for Alzheimer's research, am I right in saying?
Yes, so we chose to research? Fundraise
so you chose to research?
Ourselves. We chose to fundraise for Alzheimer's research because, Dan and I are reaching an age where grandparents, all of that.
Yeah,
lot. It's a charity that means a lot to both of us. It means a lot to a lot of people. And so, we sort of figured that it's a great cause. The work they do is absolutely fantastic, and why not?
Do a charity run in order to raise some money and have fun while doing so. Why not?
Yeah.
So, you decided on a very particular car, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, how did that come about, first of all? I was going to say,
it wasn't the first choice, so... I was adamant that I didn't want to just buy... Because the sensible thing to do would just buy an old Mondeo. Because it will go on forever.
That's too easy, though, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm more into cars than my friend Dan is. And so his criteria was... I like a car that's a fastback. And so I was
So what's your choice then? Well, if you would have said fastback to me, I'm thinking, okay, number one choice is Rover 800.
Yes. This was it. I sort of went on to...
Mark III Granada.
Marketplace, eBay, all of the usual...
usual suspects.
Usual suspects. And sort of went filter by year, newest, 2000, budget... Sub 1,500 quid because...
Sub 1,500 quid for a car to take you on a charity run from the UK to Dubrovnik.
And the thing with it is
no issues.
And the thing as well is, officially, the budget is as close to 500 quid as you can get. But I sort of figured that if I start at 1,500, I can use the power of the haggle to try and get as close.
You already told me, just off camera, that you blagged half of your university stuff anyway to start with.
Yes.
You blagged interviews.
Blagging.
And now you're saying that you can negotiate down 2/3 the price of a car.
And so it started with looking at 205s, because Dan was like, I like the slope back end.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah. We found one that had got the GTI engine paired to like a really sluggy automatic with a collapsed rear beam.
Oh, fantastic. A collapsed rear beam
as well. Rear beam. And it was in Manchester.
Transmission troubles.
So we toyed with the idea of that, but I thought if we're going up any hills with a boot full of luggage, I can't think of anything worse.
It's also going to blow up a torque converter.
Great engine.
Yes.
Not paired to a really
No.
sluggy 90s auto. So that we didn't even bother going to see.
So you're looking kind of late 80s, early 90s. That's you kind of thought, is that any reason because that's what you'd like, or just because for the nature of the charity run and the price, that's just where the happy medium is,
We sort of
versus
figured
being
that,
idiots?
Yeah, we figured that it needs to be new enough that it wouldn't be... Because, you can go and buy MG midgets and MGBs with no floors running on 2 cylinders, but we wouldn't make it off the drive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And so...
Can you imagine getting onto the Eurotunnel in an MG midget or something like that with a headlamp hanging out of it, and people say, what are the chances that's going to catch fire on the train?
Yeah, and then they came up for sale around the corner from me, a Fiat Uno 1 litre start with the most outrageous interior I've ever seen on a budget hatchback.
Go on, what kind of interior?
Like really gaudy blue and red Czech. And I went to view it, and he took me for a drive, all of that lot. Showed me the fantastic wiper, the one wiper.
The single wiper that is huge. It goes across the car.
Yeah, that was... We dithered for too long. It had looked like it had been ran into the side of, and they replaced the door but not done anything with the sill.
Yeah, but that's a Fiat thing, isn't it? How do the Italians treat their cars? It works. I use it. I've had it 30 years. It's great. And I've driven a 1 litre Uno, by the way. And
yes.
they're not fast.
No, it was not
really not. Well, was it a 45?
If you like.
It says on the side, man.
I think it was. Because I spoke to... Because that was Dan's, wasn't it?
It was, yes. I know the Uno you mean now.
We'll get to Dan later.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the Uno, the Uno that I drove.
No, so I messaged him and was like, what am I looking at? And he sort of talked me through.
Oh, okay. So you took counsel from Dan. I did a video for Twin Cam on a Fiat Uno a couple of years ago that belonged to a friend of mine that lives relatively locally to here, and so you took counsel from him.
I sort of said to him, what am I looking for? And he said, there's nothing really specific. But we took so long to deliberate about it, and the thing that pushed us to go, let's haggle and offer him some money, was the fact that I found the guy on Facebook just because it happened to come up, opened his thingy, and his banner picture was a photo of the Fiat Uno at Festival of the Unexceptional with my Mini in the background.
Oh, okay, so
I sort of figured, it must be a sign, let's buy it.
Fate.
And I texted him, I said, could I come and have a look? Do a bit of a haggle. And he said, no, I've sold it. And you're looking at a quality car when you then, maybe a week and a half later, see it come up for a raffle on retro shite.
Yes, that's very good.
How you're looking at some top tier
I love
crap.
seeing the retro shite now, because the eclectic selection of cars that I see crop up, it's like, what have they got this week? A Mark 1 Renault Megane.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that's just peak.
Yeah,
I love that so much.
It was so good that it ended up on retro shite. Nearly ended up... I got offered a Mazda 121, the Fiesta shaped one, but I was
it's a bit too average, I suppose, that, isn't it? I know it's got different badges, but it is fundamentally a Mark 4 Fiesta.
Yeah, which I was like, not boxy enough. So we then were looking at other stuff, and a Skoda Favorit came up for sale for £800 with no MOT in Hemel Hempstead. And I'd put Sarah Crabtree onto helping me find a car. I was like... You can find some stuff for a lot less than it's actually worth.
Yes.
And she was like, buy that and just put it through an MOT. I was like...
Oh, it had no MOT?
So it had no MOT.
So this was just the Skoda Favorit that you ended up buying?
Well, I was like, I can't tow it back. We're then looking at, Hemel Hempstead from Cov being...
I was going to say, you can't tow it. You can't tow it with the Mini.
Yeah, and I can't really blag, but just blag driving it home that distance on the chance that someone stops me. So I said no. And then that was that. Went back to just floating ideas, and like you say, things like the Rover 800. I toyed with the idea.
First idea of a fastback car.
I toyed
Mark
with
3
the
Escort
idea
would also do it.
Big stuff like that, but they tend to either be chronically broken or
electrical
too expensive.
Everything.
Yeah. And so I sort of was like, I steered away from it, and then the Skoda Favorit came back up for sale, having had a few things done and been put through an MOT.
Okay.
So it went back up for sale on a Wednesday night at 10 p.m. and Sarah sent to me and went, Favorit, because her daughter's had one.
Yeah, she had one.
So
she had
was
a
like,
mistake, didn't she?
She was like, it's brilliant. Go look at it. And my excuse was, well, me and Dan are going on holiday at lunchtime tomorrow. I've not got time. And she said, that's lunchtime. You have got time.
You have the morning.
That's how I found myself in a very drizzly weather, driving to Hemel Hempstead. I think I left like 6 in the morning to make it work. Looked at it. It was fine, you know, it ran nicely, it was nice and comfy, it was different, which is, you know, the key thing we wanted. It was fridge spec.
Fridge is white, isn't it?
Plastic bumpers, base spec, no optional extras. You know, all of the blanking buttons on the planet.
It's a dictionary definition of a white good car.
Yeah.
That having, 1994?
Yeah, L Reg, so 94.
So it was nearly 30 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And you know, that car shouldn't have existed. As a white good car, it should have only lived for 10, 15 years.
And that was it, you know, matching dealer plates, dealer sticker in the window, 40-odd thousand mile. And
the last proper Skoda. Many people would say.
Yeah, so because that was the point where Volkswagen bought them out, and then you know, when we got to Felicia, they started
putting VW bits into
it. And by the end of the
Skoda
Favorit,
engine.
they were beginning to put some VW bits like Polo wiring stuff, and just, you know, making it all the same stuff. But it was
1.3, am I right in saying?
Yep, so you can have any engine them you want, as long as it's a 1.3
overhead valve Skoda engine.
Yes.
Classic.
Which I think derives from like a 50s or 60s
Octavia this is why I
saloon.
mentioned it, because it's the one they used for all of the old rear engine Skodas have the same engine as that Favorit in them.
So it's it was great. And my favourite thing about it though is with all of it had sort of the same way the Metro I think does, where you've got some buttons in the middle and then some just on the right of the gauge cluster.
Yeah.
And on the right of the gauge cluster there was 3 buttons. Mm-hmm. 2 of them were blanking plates. One of them was like the rear fog light or something.
Yes. That's how it's like on the Metro.
Yeah, and I spoke to someone who'd also got a Favorit, and because they've got a GLXI.
Was that top of the range GLXI? Yeah.
Or the GLXIE was, or something like that. And I was like, so what were they for? And they said, well, one of them was for the front fog lights you would get on the top spec car. I said, what about the other one? They went, they just miscounted how many buttons they needed. So all of them.
Austin Roman did this with the Metro. So on the Metro, there's always... So if you buy a UK spec car on a Metro... God, this is nerdy. You get on the left, you've got all your climate controls. I'd say in the loosest possible term, you've got a heater fan knob, your sliders for direction and heat, and at the bottom you've got the button for your heated rear window.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, you've then got the fog lamp button and 2 blanks on my car.
Yeah.
But if you bought a high-spec car, which had a rear wiper, and the rear wiper took up 2 buttons, one for the wiper, one for the washer.
Yeah.
So that would fill the cluster, great. But if you bought a high-spec car, they didn't have the same surround. They had a different surround with more buttons in it, with more blanks. So on the right-hand side, you have the 3 that would have been filled anyway, and then 2 extra blanks that never got filled. And on the left-hand side, where you had your heated rear window, you had another blank added. For no discernible reason. Because they never filled it on UK spec cars. On foreign spec cars, you get air conditioning, which is really posh. But, like, blanking plugs galore. Anyway, it's Skoda.
So I bought it with some of Dan's money. I think he'd just been paid and I'd not been paid yet. So I said to him, can you send me some money because I'm buying the car?
So how much is this car? How much was it up for and how much did you haggle it?
It was up for like 1,300.
It's a bargain. Even how long ago was this? 2 years ago or something?
December of, not last year, the year before.
December 23.
It was like, I think it was December 23rd of 2023.
Yeah, because you went in 24, didn't you?
Yeah. And then, so I left him with some money and said I'll come back and get it at some point. I tried to haggle him down. I said, I'll give you 800 quid for it. And he said...
You some serious brass balls to say, I just want 500 quid off the car, thank you very much.
Was like, the worst he can say is no. And we were sat in the car, he was picking it down, and I said, I'll give you 800 for it. And he said, it must have been 1,200 or 1,100, because he went, well, you can have it for £1,000. I said, come on, meet me halfway, 900 quid. And he went, I am meeting you halfway. Give me £1,000.
Give me £1,000.
So I left him
for
with
the car that is worth £1,000.
Yeah, so I left him with 100 quid of Dan's money. And then, went to pick it up just before Christmas. Dan had not seen the car. I used it over
So
Christmas.
it's his money.
His money is in his name.
It's in his name.
On
it's
his insurance
car,
policy.
Sight unseen.
Sight unseen. And so, yeah, I used it for all sorts of pottering and getting used to it over Christmas.
And of course, because you've bought that car, Czech Republic and stuff like that, you can brand your journey as Czech on a Trek, which is fantastic. I love that.
So we launched the whole charity thing on like a Friday in January. Still, Dan had not seen the car at this point.
So all this branding had gone together. It exists, saying we're going to Dubrovnik in this Skoda Favorit.
And Dan's still not seen it.
Yeah.
And he's never the oldest car he'd driven was his first car, which was a Citroen C1.
Which is from at least 2005.
Yeah, with the world's most porridgey gearbox that had been absolutely battered by a lot of people. And that's the only car I've ever had a crash in. And I crashed that car into my own car while trying to move it off a driveway.
Go on, there's a story in this, isn't there? Come on. No, come on, you can't mention it and not tell the story.
I put it into where I thought reverse was, and I can't remember what the gearbox setup is, but I think it's a 5-speed with reversed in 6th. And
they are on the C1s, yeah.
I think I put it in what Dan referred to as middle space between 4th and reverse, and it just sort of went on a slight hill and went into the back of my Peugeot that I used to have. No damage, but it was the only car I've actually hit anything in.
I've had my 3 Series BMW for all of, I don't know, I'd had it for about 2 months, something like that, and on Boxing Day, me and my mum went out to go and pick up a Chinese. And so we'd left my dad and granddad's and we went out to go and get it, and I'd had this BMW for not very long and I'd liked it very much. And I was like, it's classic 6 cylinders and all this kind of stuff. And then go to pull up in a parking space outside the Chinese, and there's just a wooden fence outside. I'm used to metro length bonnets rather than big straight 6, and I just went dunk straight into the fence. And I just looked at my mum and we just kind of looked at each other like, oh.
No,
the whole fence just went in front of the Chinese.
Yeah, and then when he eventually saw the car, he didn't hate it, but yeah, he'd never driven an old car, got into it, and he was worried about lack of power steering. I said, once you're moving, doesn't matter.
Fine, yeah. We're engineered for it.
And I said, it's because they had the world's spongiest pedals. Not even in a way that indicates...
It's a quality product.
Yeah, not even in a way that indicates, I don't know, clutch cables stretching before they go, or brakes having no fluid in them. But yeah, he drove it and he was like, oh, well, I don't know when to change up because there's no rev counter. I said, okay, we'll change, put 5:45.
Yeah, I love that. Very good.
And he liked it, and so I didn't get murdered for spending his money on it. And yeah.
So what kind of mileage was this car and stuff? So what condition was it in generally? So 41,000
41,000 mile. Wow. Had one owner in Bexley, so was full of dents.
Yes.
Like 1,000,001 dents of varying size. For the most part, they tend to rust around the rear, boot area. That was solid as anything. Inside the boot, sort of just below where the window is, they all tend to rot there. Mm-hmm. That was fine. It got a bit on the around the rear window. One of the doors. One of the doors. So it was solid in all the right places, other than one sill, which had definitely been bodged through an MOT.
Yeah, and then 1,000 supermarket trolleys being smashed into it.
Yeah. So it was a brilliant little thing. Genuinely, the most fun I've ever had in a car worth so little.
Yes.
I'd
that's
go
the
and
beauty of cheap cars, though, isn't it?
Christmas Day, I went to pick up my uncle and cousins in it, who were all 6'2" plus. One of them, my uncle's an ex-rugby player, so he's built
as wide as they are tall.
Yeah. And so there was 5 of us in it coming back from the pub. I was like, I'll come pick you up. And honestly, we'd just going round about, just scrubbing on the arse.
Scrubbing on the arse, just love it.
But so yeah, it was a great car. So we fundraised for however many months, taking it to Rustival and letting people draw on it and stuff like that.
God, I've forgotten about the livery it ended up having. Well, all the drawing, then the livery and all this kind of stuff. So how did this come out? So it was January that you launched all the
January we launched it.
Social media stuff.
And officially you have to raise a minimum of 750 quid per person. We figured, be a bit ambitious, let's do 2.5 grand. And so we launched it on a Friday, just put it on Twitter, or the artist formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and sort of just went, we'll see how we do. And I then went for a curry on the Sunday night, with all of my family, and I had my phone sat at the end of the table, and we were all just sort of watching it, watching them come in as it crossed over a grand, and that just kept going and going and going.
Within what time frame again? With 3 days?
3 days. So we were sort of like, oh, okay.
Some serious support.
This is something.
You're doing a good job of something on the social media side.
What we've done right, but we've done something right.
And it's all Sarah Crabtree retweeting it.
Yeah, it's Classic Retro Modern Mag, who does anything we post, like repost. I was like, this is great, because all of their readers are the people that just love...
Oh, they're all the total nerds. The nutcases,
stuff.
Like us. I say it in the most endearing manner possible, but yeah, total nutcases.
And yeah, so then did various events in it. It went through a few liveries. The first one was basically just some vinyl wrap that we then let people draw on the car. Which, that was Rustival, and then that came off... no, it didn't, but the next phase was Rally Lights phase.
Yes! The big spots on the front of it.
One of the companies that sponsored us, DS Motorsport, they said we'll do a service, and one of them just so happened to see me post a photo of one of the works rally Favorites and put, does anyone have any spotlights we could have? And they were restoring a 65 Cooper S that they bought from auction years ago. Someone bought from auction, was a period rally car, but they wanted to go back to just like road spec, and they said, so we're about to put these Cibi Super Oscars in the bin, unless you want us to fit them when the car gets serviced next week.
Do it!
Which was that?
Do it!
Yes. So immediately what we've got now is a race car.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bone stock Skoda Favorit that has got a vinyl wrapper, which I didn't realise it was. I thought it was just on the paintwork.
Yeah, no, vinyl wrap.
Which makes sense as to why they stayed there so long.
Yeah, it was...
Vinyl wrap, loads of people have just scribbled over it.
And it got the rally lights.
And it had big, massive Cibis on the front of it.
And the thing is, the road I live on has got... it's just, sort of heavy foot traffic as well. So driving past the house, backed onto the driveway, with that all over the bonnet. I think it said, like, donate to Doodle on the top of the car, or something like that. And my mum generally sits in the living room and was like, everybody that walks past is stopping and staring at what the monstrosity parks on my driveway.
I love that. That's fantastic.
And then we had a livery that went on closer to the trip that... Yeah, we had Czech on a Trek on the roof because we figured that when we get to the Stelvio Pass, that'll look great if we could have like a top-down photo where it says Czech on the Trek on the top. And so it had Jilk's Garage Cafe on the bonnet, Thermosecure, who donated a frankly obscene amount of money to the cause in our name, and various sponsors. So it looked the part. We turned up to Dover knowing that we looked the business, and there was a great Skoda turnout. I think there was 2 or 3 Fabias. Admittedly, one Fabia wasn't supposed to be there. It's because their Rover 75 had broke down on the drive to Dover.
Nice.
So
that's just Rover 75 things.
So there was 2 Fabias, a Peugeot 307 automatic that I don't think I looked at once consciously after Dover.
Yeah.
I made a point of going, I don't want my eyes to have to be put through that. There was a Rover 216 Cabrio that we'll get back to.
I saw that. I remember seeing the picture of that.
I sort of went, is that the K-Series one? And he was like, yes. I was like, how many miles has it done? 100 and something.
The K stands for something.
It was like moon mileage. And I was like, is it right that head gasket done? He went, I don't really know. It's got no history. You open the door and you can see the previous 5 paint jobs. It had no V5, no MOT.
It had no V5.
And was absolutely
just on a whim
knackered. They bought it for 400 quid, managed to just about get it through an MOT. I was like, okay, so you're going to break down. All of the panels were falling off. Like by lunchtime on the first day, we'd had to try and zip tie the bumpers back onto the car. There was
it's not cable tying, it's drift stitching.
Yeah,
drift
sure.
Stitch. In your front wheel drive cabriolet.
There was a Mark IV Fiesta that had got a Nissan GTR inspired livery on it. A Mazda 626 Estate, a thing that you would never see.
Thing.
Never see any of. Who for the first 2 hours had working aircon. Then didn't.
It was nice while it lasted.
Yes, there was lots of like interesting stuff. There was a Toyota Starlet And because they do a couple of trips on like consecutive days, the one I was gutted we missed, one of the teams on the day after us had a Ford Probe.
I see, I'm noticing a theme. I was going to say it anyway, but the Probe has just reinforced it, that these are cars that have not necessarily been bought because they're cheap, but because they're really niche. Yeah, and so there aren't, like, you know, there's a couple there and stuff like that, but it's not just like full of 205s.
Yeah.
And full of Mark III Fiestas. There's like some interesting choices.
I think it's one of those where, you know, people that are doing it, a high percentage of them have got vague interest in cars.
Yeah.
There was also,
it would make sense.
There was also two or three Saab 9.3 Cabrios, all in black. All just coincidence. All of the Saab 9.3 Cabrios that all spent the journey in limp mode. Yes. One of which spent most of its time with an OBD reader plugged in, clearing it came through every time.
It's remains plugged in. You're going down the motorway. It's just clear.
Yeah.
Just to keep it out of limp mode.
So there was a decent range of stuff, and that Rover, everyone was like, not a chance, not a chance. And so yeah, got on the ferry, got on our way. First day, we stopped off at Dunkirk with the team in the Mark II X5, and as we drove away from Dunkirk, it threw its exhaust at us. It's like the calibre of car we're dealing with. It just decided, you know what, we're much better off if we throw an exhaust at you.
Yeah.
And I was driving, and Dan was going, that's getting quite low. It's banging on the every time at the lights, you bang, it bangs off, and then it threw. I can't remember if it was just the pipe from the tip to the back box, or the back. I think it was just to the back box, and I was like, that's going to come off. So I backed off because we were on like a 60-mile-an-hour road, and then next thing I know, there's an exhaust coming barreling at me, and there's a ditch on one side of the road, and so I was going to go, I'm going to go left. And it had sort of like rugby ball syndrome where you never know where it's going to bounce.
Yeah, it bounces and goes that way and then that way.
Wiggling, dipped a wheel into the ditch, got back on the road and just pulled over, and we were like, are you going to go pick it up? And he went, no, I'm not going back down a 60-mile-an-hour road to pick up a piece of very warm metal.
Yeah, it will, very hard metal.
But yeah, as we drove away, you just hear horns as they go past this just lump in the middle of the road. So yeah, then to
It's
Belgium.
very socially aware and, you know, kind of...
Yeah.
a lot of thought.
So then Belgium was the first night. I've been to bed since then, so can't remember whether the next night was. I think we went towards Germany.
Well, at the moment, everything's going pretty smoothly. Car is nice.
Genuinely, the Favorit in an element of its own on the motorway. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know it, but it will happily cruise at...
Was it 5-speed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will happily cruise at motorway speeds and some.
Allegedly, officer. Allegedly.
Whatever the equivalent of 80 mile an hour is that you can sort. I think you can sort of do it in France, but yeah, that was absolutely
130 k's an hour is quite common across Europe.
To say that it only got, I think, 50 horsepower from new.
Yeah.
So, they've escaped over time.
If it loses one a year and it's 30 years old, then it's now got 20 horsepower.
Yeah. This was the thing. I was like, God, it's so slow, because they'd seen me rag it out of lights and things to try and
build up some speed.
And then we'd get onto the motorway, and I would just happily outside lane. Has come flying.
Once you get it in the power band, it's all right.
And everyone's sort of staring at me. And if I have to back off, that's it. It's 25 minutes till I'm back to motorway speed.
Yes.
But it was, it was comfortable.
It's a
practical.
momentum car.
It was genuinely brilliant fun.
Yeah. And also, by the time, so this is what, your second day, third day?
Yeah,
on the trip.
day.
So from you're setting up the collection and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff to the trip actually. How many months were between?
So January, and we
summer,
left in the back end of June. So someone else do the maths.
By the
6-7 months.
You left, how much had you raised?
I think we were up to about 6, 7, 8 grand, something like that.
7, 8,000 pounds.
Every time we
and you thought, we'll get 1,500 quid.
Every time that we hit the target, we'd go, oh well, we'll just double it or add another 2.5 grand, and everyone would be like, a bit greedy or ambitious. I was like, okay, if we don't hit it, that's fine.
And it's for charity.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with it. The more you raise, the more good it does.
We were like getting into the continent, and then we got into I think we're in the Swiss Alps by this point, maybe still Germany. No, we weren't. None of those. Austria. And we had spent the day going to Neuschwanstein, which is the castle that inspired Disney and whatever. It was performing brilliantly, a bit sluggy up the hills. lorries coming past, but you know, second gear
works.
and it's fine. Then I was tasked with, one of the people said, if you can steal the sunroof out of the Mark IV Fiesta, you can have a bottle of champagne for your troubles. And so suddenly I became best friends with the team in the Fiesta. And managed to nick their thing. You won some champagne. So then we went to a lake, went for a swim, bit of pedalo stuff. I'm sat on the pedalo, having away overtime, drinking me champagne. So then when we get back in the car...
There are pictures of that again, aren't they? Yeah.
Dan's turn to drive, and I figured, mid-afternoon, booze-fueled nap in the passenger seat, sun shining. So I'm just dozing off, and I just get a punch. And he goes, clutch is gone. And luckily, we were coming down a hill into a petrol station. And my panic was never that we'd break down. It was that Dan's confidence, he'd go into panic mode.
Wrecked by that,
just go into panic mode with the car if the car broke. And to be fair to him, got the hazards on, which stuck on because the button was broken, and managed to get it into this petrol station. Very quickly figured out it was a cable that had snapped. And so tried a bit of bike cable, tried a few things, but it just wasn't happening. So just like that, it was almost like the world has ended. It's all over.
It's all going so well, so smoothly. It's all, you raised all the money.
Yeah.
Car's going really nicely, and then
the car broke.
It's not. While you're a little bit.
While we were in the middle of nowhere between two very big mountains.
Yeah, you're in the middle of nowhere generally, and you're a little bit happy. You know.
Yeah, it's amazing how sobering breaking down is.
Suddenly you go from it's nice, quite ethereal side of the passenger seat stuff. The scenery's all going by, beautiful Austrian countryside and stuff like that, and then suddenly...
and Dan not being particularly mechanically minded, and me being of the opinion that if my car breaks, I don't want to go near it. If something else breaks, brilliant. You know, later in the trip when other people started having problems, you know, stopping, helping, all of that lot. My car, no chance. And so that was it. We had to get it towed to a garage that were shut, literally left it outside, took whatever we could out of the car and put it into one of the other team's cars, a Mark IV Golf, that varying shades of broken, burn an insane amount of oil. One of the doors didn't open, but we just piled whatever we could in and went to the next checkpoint. And then that was it. The next morning, everyone left without us. And so we had to figure out, can we get a cable? Can we get it fitted, because it's the weekend? You know, because we had no real way of getting back. We'd crossed the border into Italy. We had no way of getting back to the car. And it was about 4 or 5 o'clock that day. And we just figured, let's interrail to Lake Garda, where the rest of them are. And we'll just pick up a car somewhere. We'll find a car. And so we played breakdown courtesy car roulette. Came up with a Fiat 500X.
Fantastic.
And yeah,
very stylish.
Yeah,
very classic.
Very stylish, in a very fetching shade of metallic blue. And yeah, Dan not having driven left-hand drive, me not really having driven that much left-hand drive. In the dark, couldn't find the headlights, drove, so we got about 5 trains and buses and whatever down to Verona, picked up a car at Verona Airport, and I'm not saying I disliked it, but I did try to hand it back. She
said it's a Fiat 500X, and you're like, no, don't want it, I'd rather walk.
We were told it was going to be like a Corsa-sized car, so I was like, please be a Panda, please be a Panda.
Exactly, you want it to be a Panda.
Or like a Dacia Sandero.
Yeah. Something that's quite fitting, that suits the local scenery, that suits the Dacia Dubrovnik
an equally
whole thing.
fridge-spec hatchback.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, she said, we've upgraded you to a Fiat 500X. And yeah, I went out, looked at it, and a warning light came up on the screen. I genuinely said to Dan, I'm handing it back. I tried to, and she went, we've literally got nothing else. And it was parked next to, and I've got to assume that it was just parked in the multi-storey, a battered-looking Fiat Seicento. I was like, no, Cinquecento, the boxy one.
I
said,
boxy
I
one.
will even take that, so I
that
don't have to drive this.
And they're really good cars.
So yeah, we then got to Lake Garda and then took the rest of the trip in the Fiat. which was great because we had aircon, and the aircon had recirc, so that we were the allocated follow the Mark IV Golf that's burning oil.
Oh yes, so you don't have to breathe the oil.
Everyone else was like, we cannot follow it. It makes eyes water. It was down hills. It was the worst. You see plumes of blue smoke coming out. And so yeah, it was the last few days down into Dubrovnik. The last run to Croatia, everyone's cars started to go.
So how many miles have kind of been covered by this point?
1,500?
1,500-ish miles.
I don't know.
In how many days?
It was 8 days there.
8 days.
I think, yeah. So cars are starting to go. The Starlet, the clutch master cylinder went at the top of the Stelvio Pass, but there was a man called James in one of the Saabs who, it was just like some sort of mechanical god, which, yeah, he's got various Morris Minors, Defenders, all of that sort of stuff.
Well versed in fixing stuff that breaks all the time.
And then when we got in, the Fiesta developed a fuel leak above 80 mile an hour. Either that or it just became the world's most uneconomical car on the planet. The Golf started just misfiring constantly, and every time...
This is on top of it burning oil?
Yep.
Maybe it was the oil that caused the misfire.
It made it home.
It made it home as well.
It back home. I don't know how, but he didn't go straight home. He went all the way around like Northern Europe.
Was it a diesel Golf, petrol Golf?
Yes. It was one of the two. I imagine it ran on one of them.
It probably wasn't LPG.
It was one of them. And so yeah, people were starting to like have problems, but not problems that like stop their cars, just real heavy inconveniences. And then yeah, so we got to Dubrovnik, and then we had to like figure out, well, what now? My uncle had managed to find 2 clutch cables that he got on their way to the garage.
So you've abandoned your Skoda. You've got to Dubrovnik. Everyone,
the Skoda's still in
everyone
Austria.
else is there.
Yeah.
Only you.
And we basically came to the conclusion that if the car was fixed, we could pick it up on the way home. So us, the Mark IV Fiesta, which by this point was missing a door card, and like all of the trim was falling apart, and then the Rover, which was still going.
Yes.
Somehow, there was one lad in the Rover, one in the Ford, and we figured we'll drive back, and then one of you can try and drop us to the Skoda, which will be fixed by then, we're told, and then me and Dan can go our way, go to Czech Republic, because the plan was to go back to Skoda where it was built. But we got there and found out that the 2 cables that had arrived were left-hand drive ones, which to say that the garage phoned us and went, yeah, the cables have arrived and they're the right ones. So we backed off, hunting for them. We were like, don't worry, guys, we've got a cable. It'll be fitted to the car. And so yeah, we had to leave the car there, and then stay in the back of this Rover Cabrio all the way back to Bristol, where the guy who had the Rover lived. And what I love about it is that car was faultless. Other than the Peugeot that will not be named,
yes,
it was the only car I think that had no problems.
The one that looked as though it would break down first.
Yeah.
Everything falling off it. Kettle series engine.
Absolutely awful.
I love the K series.
It made it home.
I love it.
And he parked it up at his dad's house or something for like 2 weeks. Came back to it, and the head gasket had gone. He'd not driven it, it hadn't been turned over, it hadn't moved, it was sat on the driveway.
These are the Rover
and it just decided to just go...
These things break, but they never leave you stranded. So my white Metro and my red Metro have had issues. They've never... In fact, no, to be fair, the white Metro did leave me stranded once, but my dad was driving. This was before I was driving.
It's not your fault.
So it's not my fault. So that's okay, the thermostat's still closed, and we were on the M40. Coming north from Gaydon.
Yes.
The motorway is about to split. So you lose the hard shoulder.
Yeah.
And the temperature gauge was very much in the red, and it's a K-series engine anyway. And we're like, we should probably stop. And as we were coming to a halt, it popped the coolant cap off, and you saw steam coming out the bonnet and stuff. So it did overheat itself. But whenever I had an issue with it later on, so the carburettor just decided to miss fuel totally.
Yeah.
It never left me stranded. It would always get me home. It would run of a fashion. Get home,
it would move,
then break.
Yeah.
Well, and the thermostat, again, another thermostat went on that Metro, and I was going down to do a video on a Mark II Capri in Shrewsbury, And on the way down, I started to notice it's getting really quite hot, this car. And so on the way home, I didn't go on the motorway. I went on the A roads and B roads back up north. And I just sat at like 50 mile an hour, and then whenever there was a passing place, I just let the queue of traffic behind me past, and it was fine. It was just very happy to bob along with the radiator fan constantly on.
Yeah.
But it never left me stranded. Red Metro as well, big gearbox issues, and I noticed it coming back from a big journey, and it was just like, yeah, it'll stay. It'll be absolutely fine until I get home. The Rover gods look down upon the K-Series engine of the Rover Cabriolet and let it carry on until it could rest.
Just on the note of overheating and head gaskets, the Favorites do have a bit of a thing for it. Admittedly, I was doing 97 on the Autobahn. I had to do a bit
That's kilometres per hour, ladies and gentlemen.
It's Autobahn, like, it doesn't matter. It did take a while to get there, and Dan was sort of gripping the passenger seat. Really white knuckled. But the temperature gauge crept up, so we ended up pulling over, bonnet open. We'd got an electric fan, just left that running for a bit. While we had a bit of dinner. Literally sat having a sandwich, watching the car with its bonnet open in the car park with the fan on.
Yeah, I've been there, done that with my K-Series Metro.
The thing with the Favorit is the dials are all connected to the engine via like a series of seances. Like there's the fuel gauge on them. It
just goes like that. Best of
it just
times.
goes like that.
Yeah.
It spends the whole time doing that. I think it's if you put your foot down and go left, it goes up. If you put the brakes on and go right, it goes down. So you could have a full tank in the car, but if you slow down for the wrong corner, you've got an empty tank according to the dash.
Absolutely.
As I said, it had a clock that didn't work. The temperature gauge was a bit. Sometimes it read that running temperature was halfway. Sometimes it was a third. And it wasn't that the engine was different temperatures, it was just the fact that the gauge was slightly more awake that day.
Yes. It just decided its resistance is different today.
And so... What we're talking about, yeah, so we nearly overheated, and just there was a few times we had to give it a moment just to think about what it's done.
Again, I've been not long after I had the incident of nearly overheating. I was doing the North Coast 500 in my white Metro, and I just didn't. It was fixed. It had a new radiator. It had a new thermostat because it needed the radiator anyway. The old radiator. It didn't have a core anymore. It was just 30 years.
Totally pickled.
And so I got a new radiator, a new thermostat, and I knew it was absolutely fine. But while on the way up to Scotland, so we've not even done any of the route yet, the temperature gauge slowly started to die. So it read colder and colder and colder and colder and colder and colder until it just read nothing at all. And I knew it was getting up to temperature because the engine is hot. I had an infrared thermometer even that I'd bought in my panic. And it was all at normal working temperature and stuff. But every time we stopped at a services, I was like, because I had an auxiliary switch fitted for the radiator fan. Fan on, open bonnet. No reason to do it. I was just so petrified. But it was good as gold. Yeah, it was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Just the gauge died.
But yeah, so we got back to the UK. The car was still in Austria, and we'd put a date in to almost like the Jilk's Garage Cafe to have an evening talking about what had gone on.
Yes.
And at this point, it was maybe a month after we'd got back, and we told nobody that the insurance company had offered to tow the car back. Well, under two conditions: up to the value of the car distance-wise. Mm-hmm. And if we'd already left the place that the car was stuck. Now, we were having these conversations with them on the way back. So we're like, we left there 7 days ago.
And the car is
still there.
Just there.
And so we were a bit antsy, like, car is not worth enough. Because they were like, it'll cost about 1,600 quid to get home.
It's quite a long way.
But luckily, I think the only Favorit they could find for sale at the time was the one on KGF. It was like $6,500. So they just phoned Dad one day at work and were like, are you at home? He was like, no, I'm at work, why? Oh, well, just leave the Favorit on your drive then. And they just towed it back. And
they just deposited a Skoda
Just deposited it there. And the keys were in the letterbox.
Very good.
But yeah, we told nobody. And so at the evening, we were talking about, whatever, and then we did a questions bit at the end, and obviously the first question was a hand going up, where is the Skoda? And at which point my dad had crept up, gone round to the front of the building, opened, because there's barn doors, opened the barn, got the Skoda out, driven it round, and do a bit of showmanship, and all the way from
And here it
Austria,
is.
working and moving under its own steam.
Yes. Having finally found a clutch cable.
Yep. Our Favorit. And yeah, that got me in a bit of trouble. One of my friends, I'd been round his house for his birthday the night before with his whole family, and they'd be grilling me about that car for 2 hours, and I'm still sorry, Ollie.
And you hadn't let anything go.
Oh, yeah, it's still in Austria. I just don't know what we're going to do with it.
It's rubbish.
We then went to the pub after that. We were in the pub for maybe 2.5 hours, and everyone was sat around the table like this, and he was separated by maybe one person, so he made a point of spending the whole evening sat like that, not talking to me.
Oh, dear,
Because his whole family, you know, his grandparents, his little brother, his mum and dad, and I just kept saying, "Oh, it's in Austria. I don't know what we're going to do with it." It was on my driveway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very good.
Ollie, if you're watching this, I'm still very, very sorry. Please forgive me.
He won't forgive you ever.
No.
But that's good showmanship. That's very good showmanship.
He was still giving me grief over it last week. A year had passed.
So how much in the end? You know, after all this stuff, after getting back, getting the car back to England as well, getting it fixed, etc., and doing all the kind of media stuff around it that you ended up doing.
I think, yeah.
How much did you end up raising?
£11,750.
£11,750, which is 11 times the value of the car.
This is
in donations.
one of the guys I work with. You know, when we first bought it, he's very much a Porsche 911 enthusiast. He believes in every car or every problem you've got. The answer is an MX-5. Because it's a driver's car.
The answer
he
is
doesn't
always
understand.
Miata.
You know, he's a bit older than me. He doesn't understand the whole just street litter car appeal.
Yeah, it is.
But by the end, he was like, "No, you somehow, in my eyes, managed to make a Skoda Favorit cool, and also managed to make one of the more well-known Favorits in the country.
Yeah.
Because there's not many of them.
No,
There's one on like hydraulics or bags or something that can three-wheel.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but it also had big civvies on the front of it.
Yeah, rally
It did look like a rally car. I will admit, white paint does a lot for a car looking like a rally car.
Yeah.
Delivery.
And the
Big civvies on the front, it really did look like a rally car.
even
And
when
steel wheels somehow go really hard as well.
Yeah.
They go really hard.
So yeah, we raised a frankly silly amount of money, and to say that in previous years, I think the most successful dash team had ever raised about £1,000 or 1,200 quid per person, and me and Dan were just shy of £6,000.
£6,000
They were
per
sort of
person.
just. You know, they did a phone call with us a month and a bit before the trip, just to see how we're getting on with fundraising, if we need any help, X, Y, Z. And I took the call and he just went, "What are you two doing? I don't understand it, but you're doing something right."
Because for months and months and months, all I ever saw on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, any social media feed that I went on, and anyone involving cars on it was just check on a track, check on a track, check. I don't know how you managed it.
I don't, but what was nice as well is that we got, the social media page got shared about loads. We did bits with Practical Classics, Classic Car Weekly, just little bits. Classic Retro Modern, we ran a big spread before, like a 2-3 page spread before we went, and then a massive spread afterwards. So yes, there was a whole car world, but also local radio, stuff like, what's quite funny with the local radio is they now always phone me for anything car related.
Once you're in the circle, you're in the circle.
When the Capri, the new Capri came out, I was at work and there was a phone, like, "Hi, isn't it a good time? Who is this?" And like, it's insert local radio.
Yes.
We were just wondering, what's your thoughts on the new Ford Capri? I was like, am I now your auto correspondent? Like,
yeah, exactly.
But it's not limited to that. They phone me about all sorts. I think there's sometimes something political will happen, and I'll see the phone. I tend not to answer because they tend to phone when I'm at work. So
which makes sense.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll just get a phone call and I'll just look at the news and I think, what could it possibly be? The last time they phoned me was the day after the American election. I was like, please don't tell me I'm now the politics correspondent as well.
Trump. Oh no.
Just like, why am I now your correspondent for everything? But yeah, so we managed to appeal to more than just the car world, which was really nice. Really, really nice. And we did video bits with Steph from Our Driver Classic, obviously Rustival events. So really, I just ended up taking it round with me and my social life to car events, and then obviously people ask because it is. I used to brag that it was the coolest Czech vehicle at any given car event. which did really well until a Gaydon gathering at the British Motor Museum when a Tatra T77 pulled up in beige. I was like,
yeah, okay, you can't.
I've been outdone here.
Sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
Yeah, but we stripped of its stickers. Did spend a day or two with it still with the rally lights on.
It should have been in a museum, that car, with the stickers on.
I
just tried to get it to Gaydon.
I think that if we'd got it to Skoda and they'd said we could, I'd have happily left it there.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? That'd be awesome.
So cool. To have bought £1,000 worth of Favorit, driven it across Europe, broken down in it. He's done all this stuff, raised a huge amount of money and stuff, and then it ends up at Skoda in a museum. That would be brilliant. Just be so cool.
Alas, no. Dan didn't particularly want to keep it just because other things on.
Yeah, of course. Space.
Yeah, space. His housemate has an affliction with various MG midgets, and so their neighbours already moaned when the Favorit was there for some time. That,
yeah. In addition to the 6 MG midgets or something.
It was like a used car lot. And I, with my Mini, my daily driver, and then all of the others, just didn't have the room. So we sold it to Dan, who Dan too,
as in who had the Fiat Uno that we mentioned before.
Yes. So for a while he was running it with his fleet of Metro, Uno,
Seicento for a while.
Yeah. But when he had the Favorit, he had the Favorit, a Metro just like yours, and a Mark II Mondeo.
Oh yeah, a Mark II Mondeo
estate. Top spec with
Gear
a V6.
X
yeah.
In it was almost like a BMW messing metallic, which I don't know whether you know the colour, but it's really cool. And
then he's unfortunately had to sell it because of
reasons,
adult things that cost money, and then
houses, etc.
And he ended up selling the Mondeo and the Favorit, which I told him was the wrong answer because Favorit is always the answer. And then it's gone to a man called, and I know his name because he texts me, his name is Tim, and Tim, did have a gorgeous Mark 1 KA.
Again, just street furniture.
Yeah, I'm not particularly afflicted with KAs, but he sold the KA to have the Favorit because he always wanted one. But his KA was lovely. It was
I like that.
Metallic British Racing green.
Oh yeah, did it have the black trim on it?
Yeah,
all over? Yeah, they should all have. When they've later put the body colour, everything, I think it lost something.
Yeah, there's a really algal silver one with the body colour bumpers on my.
I like all the black bumpers. It's just I believe when Ford. This is so off topic, but I believe when Ford were developing it, one of the things was because it's just a little Fiesta.
Yeah.
So there's no apart from some extra sales from people who think they're slightly too quirky to own a Fiesta. This is 1996 or something. The idea behind it is that take any individual part of that car and you can tell what it is.
Yeah.
And that was the idea. I think they got that. I think they're interesting little things.
Yeah, so he's now got it. He's great. He will text me when something goes wrong and go, "Is this something you bodged?" And I say, "Yes."
Invariably.
Because the radio in it as well, it had an aftermarket radio that it would just come on while you're driving at full volume with traffic reports, and it scared the living daylights out of me. So I unplugged it. And then later, Dan was like, "Can we actually have something other than silence in the car?"
So other than just a little overhead valve engine tapping away.
Plugged it back in, and couldn't get it to work. And this is really going to show my age of dealing with cars with that era radio. It's only now that Tim's got it, several months on, he messaged me and said, "Well, was there anything that blew the radio?" I said, "No, I unplugged it, plugged it back in." He said, "Okay, on Saturday I'm going to spend the day trying to get it working again." I think it must have been quite early into the day I got a message and it was like, "Have you ever heard of radio pin codes?" And I just hadn't bothered to put the number in. Yeah. So just went, "It's broken."
It doesn't exist anymore. You can't access it. You should have unplugged it.
So he's got it. There's a Favorit estate that's come up for sale earlier this week, and he said to me,
estates are quite cool.
Very cool.
Really
1,700 quid. It's that colour green.
Yes.
There you go.
That colour green.
That colour green. And I think it's a 92. So
on a K or a J, something like that.
K, I think it's a K reg. And so he said, "If you want, I can buy that, and you can have your Favorit back." And I sat for 10 minutes and thought, "Oh," and then thought, "No." be sensible.
Yeah.
I'd love to get it back
It's
at some
great.
point, but
But yeah, have you still got the civvies, or are they gone?
I kept the civvies.
Yeah, of course. You put them on the Mini.
Well, so
in which they're bigger than the normal headlights.
Yeah. I don't know what they're going to go on at some point. A friend of mine's about to buy a Mark IV Fiesta as a daily driver that is, again, fridge spec. But coloured bumpers, but still quite fridge spec.
Yeah.
So I was like, you can borrow them to
I love
put
that.
on
I've never heard that before today. Fridge spec. But it makes
I don't
sense.
know if it's like
great. Fridge spec. Yeah.
But, you know, proper white goods. And sort of the
if it was
criteria...
badge hot point, you wouldn't be surprised. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's got to be white, it's got to be base spec, it's got to have black plastic bumpers. But there's a whole thing for that now.
Have you ever seen my Rover Metro?
Well, yeah.
That's absolutely perfect. It's even got little hubcaps on it.
There's a whole thing for it. I saw a guy on Instagram or some social media who'd done like an edit of a brand new Porsche 911 on
Yes.
steel wheels, plastic bumpers, and he'd even put like
That's so
got
cool.
the rear quarter light and put it white like it was a van. I was
Yeah.
like, this is great. And I think the only cars you can buy, I don't think you can buy the Sandero anymore with black
No, you
plastic.
can't. I
But-
don't think so.
But I think the Spring, which is their new little electric one,
You can buy that with
you
black
can buy
bumpers.
that with black,
Certainly.
white fridge.
I know that at a certain point, you could get only in Japan, because the Japanese market always gets the cool stuff. And then the Americans moan that the Europeans always get the cool
Yeah.
stuff, but it's the Japanese that really get it all. You used to be able to buy a Toyota GT86,
Yeah.
as in the first
Yeah,
gen
yeah.
car. GT86 that was like just bare, because the idea is people are going to turn it into a race car anyway, so it's not going to retain any.
That,
You know,
yeah, that's
what's the point in painting it a cool
But,
metallic
yeah.
colour if they're just going to wrap it with like racing stuff on
Yeah.
it? And so you could buy a GT86 with narrow steel wheels, I believe with black bumpers, but don't quote me on that, but in poverty white, fridge white.
That's incredible.
With steel wheels
That's great.
and no equipment inside. I believe it might have had a radio, but I don't think it had air conditioning.
That is class.
And this is only like, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you could buy a Japanese sports car, but that's just ace. I love that. But if Porsche did that with the 911, the thing about Porsche is that they are eternally desirable.
Yeah.
Is that everybody just wants Porsches. So Porsche do any special edition, like the Dakar one, for example.
Yeah.
I get the Dakar one. Everybody loves that. Everyone buys it. But Porsche could just shove out any limited edition 911, and everyone would pay £1 million for them. So Porsche could just not paint the plastic bumpers of a 911. Say that it's a classic spec 911. There you go.
So
and people buy it.
So what we've ascertained is that I bought a car with someone else's money,
Yeah.
then left him and myself stranded in Austria, came back, sold the car, still sort of miss it, but not enough to buy it back because, again, space. And it needs a few bits doing with paintwork and
It's a dirty old
dents.
car.
And, yeah. And that Porsche need a fridge spec.
Yeah,
so
Porsche need to
we put the words right.
take the philosophy of that right. But so this year, of course, Dash to Dubrovnik is a yearly thing.
Yeah.
Are you considering doing it all over again? It's a little bit late now, of course, because by this point you already had
Yeah, we've bought the car and been...
car set up, all that kind of stuff.
No, they've spoken to us about maybe being a support vehicle, in which case it's an excuse to buy another car.
Yeah,
So,
what kind of car though?
I think it would be great to do it in another Skoda, but again...
I just gonna say, keep talking, because I've just got a selection of car brochures here. Let's choose. Let's select E30. We've not got £1 million to go and show that to a camera.
Oh, yes.
Oh, 190E.
One of my neighbours has got one of these that he bought for not a lot of money, like £1,000, an auto 2.6 straight 6 one. If he wants to give me that, yeah, one of those. Something that
E36
isn't going to break.
328i.
Something that isn't going to break.
Oh, stuff that isn't going to break. Well, you're not going to like this. Daimler.
Well, I did try and egg Dan on in the early days that we wanted a DS420 limo.
I was about to show you the first thing I was going to get out. If it's in here, I don't think it is.
'Cause
Is
those
the
are so
Daimler
cheap.
limousine? They're worth nothing because they're elderly and they look a bit funereal, don't they?
And they're either funeral spec or wedding spec.
But they're not here. There's Daimler 66, which will just for the
Again,
sake of
yeah.
posterity. Daimler 66 with the V12
Yeah.
and a clock. I don't know why either. But yeah, don't buy unreliable cars.
I'd love to do it in something classic, or do because I've never taken my Mini abroad. I want to do some sort of
again,
Yeah,
Mini.
my
that's
Mini.
that's the era of Connor's Mini, early 80s.
And so I'd love to do it in something like that, but that's not the trip. You really want to buy something white goods, terrible. The Maxi.
The Austin
Again,
Maxi.
yeah.
We have one at Manor Park for this auction coming up.
That's
you
the
should
sort
buy
of
it.
So
it's a 1750.
when I talk about stuff that I'd love to like do a classic road trip in, that would be perfect because it'd be comfy,
So practical.
fairly pokey, quite practical, but I just don't like it enough to want to keep it afterwards.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the point,
Yeah.
I think, isn't it? Because if you keep it afterwards, then you end up amassing cars.
And I never thought I'd say this with a maxi.
Yeah,
but
I know, it's true.
It's
Fair point.
too nice for the point of dash. I think
That's
you know,
rubbish. You can't
I think
say
I'd
that.
probably lean towards maybe another Skoda, maybe a Felicia.
TR7, they're still not worth a lot of money. Not a Stag. Stags are a bit. There you go.
TR7 would be, yeah.
Comfortable? Reliable? No.
Yeah. yeah.
But comfortable, yeah. Practical, yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah, it's a load
figure.
of rubbish in them.
So I figure probably something 90s Algal. It would have to have 4 seats if we were going as a support vehicle. So
Not a TR7.
not a TR7
Or an MX-5.
or an MX-5.
Or an MGF. Because the Rover gods will look down fondly upon you again.
Yeah.
And you'll make it.
It'll break when we get
and then
home.
it'll break when you get home.
See, I don't know. I think I'd be tempted to go down the. Because you can pick up Rover 600s relatively cheap.
but they're too reliable.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't
It's
know.
a potential then. But then again, the Favorit's reliable. I mean, it wasn't.
It's reliable until it's not.
But they have a reputation for being reliable.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, I don't know if we'll do it again. If we do, I'd imagine it will be 90s poverty spec stuff.
potentially as a support vehicle.
Yeah.
If you're doing it this year, but next year, you can always do the
Well,
whole charade again.
I'm adamant that next year, this year or next year, I'm going to properly do Europe in the Mini.
Yeah.
Because I've barely used it while I've had the Favorit, so it was a bit of a get a bit more confidence back in the car again.
Yours is an HL, isn't it? I love that
HLE,
interior.
so I have those seats.
That's so cool.
And I just think, yeah, go to France or Spain or Italy or
Do something cool in minis. So a friend of mine has a Mini City. You know Connor.
yes,
And he's going across Europe this year in it.
Yeah.
And he's had it tuned. It's set up by AC Dodge, so it works. It goes, but it's still a 1 litre Mini. And he's quite a big chap. If you hadn't noticed.
Yes.
He's quite a big chap. And he was thinking, well, it's going to have 2 people in it. Not me being the passenger,
Yeah.
by the way, someone else. It's going to have 2 people in it. And he lives in West Yorkshire. It's very hilly.
Yeah.
With a 1 litre Mini from 40 years ago. And so with 2 people in it, he thought, I was over at his last weekend, he thought, that's good, this is an opportunity to see what the Mini's like. It just doesn't move. It just won't go up hills.
I went 4 up in the Mini once with quite large people. Never again.
It didn't really move.
No.
You need a big torquey engine in it. Big 1275 A series and get it really going.
Yeah, so
Twin carbs.
yes, I think more continental road trips are planned, and Dan and I have booked the end of this month. So fly out on like the 26th of Feb. Skoda have said, you let us down last time, but we'll give you another chance.
Yeah, we'll give you another chance.
So we're going to go and visit. They're going to show us around the factory that's still there, where the Favorit was built. The current build, I think they currently build Fabia there. Then they've got a museum, so go and have a look around the museum. And then also they've got a secret depository full of race cars. And in there, God, I'm really waffling on with some niche stuff now.
No, this is great, because the only
there-
people who click on this anyway are going to be
Yeah.
the weirdos who look at that and think,
So
that's really cool.
if you Google 1993 or 4 Skoda Favorit 1600H or 1800H, they built one to do the 24 hours of the Nürburgring with a massive body kit.
Brilliant.
And a massive, really stupid but really cool wing. And it won its class. And there's videos of it going around the Nürburgring, like overtaking.
And is this in period 30 years ago? I love that.
Overtaking like 190E Cosworths, Sierra Cosworths. There's like Porsches on the grid.
And is it like a bored or stroked out version of that standard
I don't
overhead
know if it's the same
overhead
engine.
valve engine?
I don't know. I've got to
It-
assume it is.
Yeah,
but,
it makes sense, but it's not a particularly racy engine.
No, but it is an incredible thing because it sort of just looks like someone has got a syringe and just pumped water in it. And it's just gone.
I'm gonna have to Google this once we finish because that's cool.
it is brilliant. So yeah, we're gonna go and have a look around Skoda, and then I think check on a Trek, the social media page is going to become a bit of a. Because Dan is allergic to saying no to holidays, so I think it may well end up being a bit of a travelling around, seeing what we get up to, and if I can convince Dan to let me drive him around Europe in the Mini, without him saying, I don't trust you or your car.
Or the car. Yeah. Well, you don't trust your own car at the moment,
Well,
really.
yeah, I do and I don't. It's one of those where I've been burnt with Favorits, and Minis aren't known for being Favorit plus one reliability.
No, definitely not.
So,
but it's reminding me actually that I remember seeing from quite early in the Favorit's production when they still had the badge on the side of the grille. There was I don't know whether it was the RAC rally or it was what was the old rally that used to be done in Ireland every year? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what I mean. What the yearly big rally that used to do in Ireland. It was a Top Gear report with Tony Mason doing the commentary. Old Top Gear rally report when they used to do those things, and it was this little Favorit that was like leading its class.
They were brilliant.
It was just it had white wheels on it as well, and it was just so cool.
Well, this is it. We got in a bit of trouble with someone from the Skoda Favorit Owners Club because we did some T-shirts to fundraise some money, and also because I've always wanted a car on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
With Tacona and the.
God,
it was
what
like
did it say?
It was an old,
because I know what you're gonna say.
advert style thing, and it said, "If you squint hard enough, it's an Integrale."
Yeah.
And they got very angry because it basically got taglined as the hashtag Skintegrale.
Yes.
And we had that on the grill and everything. And they were like, there was a lot of people. Oh, it was a very good rally car in its own right. Yes.
It's just a joke.
And when we got to Dubrovnik, there was a white Delta Integrale in Dubrovnik. We came out of a pub or a nightclub.
Oh, what a shame you didn't have the car there.
The owner was stood there. I was like, oh, I love these. He goes, yeah, I've always wanted one. I said, we've got one, but it's in Austria. And he goes, oh, really? I says, yes, we have our own. It's just like this, but it's got black bumpers instead. But we've got rally lights on it. And he was talking about how, he'd love a rally one, but you don't need two. Yeah.
This is hilarious.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. We came out of... It was a nightclub called Revelin. We came out of it.
This is you blagging things again.
It was some silly time in the morning. And he was there with his...
Just by chance, there was a bloke with a Lancia Delta Integrale.
With a Delta Integrale. I think it was white. Yeah.
But it would make sense if it was white because it matches then, doesn't it?
I was like, you could not write this. You could not write it.
Absolutely fantastic. And you mentioned the Nürburgring 24, and goodness, we're waffling on.
Yeah.
But the Nürburgring 24, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, a privateer decided to enter it, and they were raising money for charity. I can't remember what charity it was or anything like that, but they entered it in a Dacia Logan.
Yes,
like the mid 2000s one.
If you Google Dacia race cars, there is a lot of historical, really weird.
It's brilliant, but they did the Nürburgring 24 in it, and they got well into the early hours of the morning in it. It was doing, it was down the bottom, but it was doing quite well for itself considering what it is. And then someone I think it was a 911 GT3 car, just shunted into it from behind and just. The rear lamps were where the rear passenger would have ended up being, because it was like, I don't know how well you know the Nürburgring, but coming down the hill towards the big straight. And so you come down from Hoheacht through Whipham and all that kind of stuff, and it's a brilliant bit of racing stick. It's all blind. It's totally blind. It's all crests. You're going downhill, so it's ruinously fast. This 911 GT3 at 2 o'clock in the morning just pasted itself into the back of the Dacia.
Like being known as the 911 driver who was talented enough to do the 24 hours. Talented enough to do the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, but didn't survive it because they found the back end of a Dacia Logan.
The roadblock that was the Dacia. I love it though, and I don't know whether the car was rebuilt because it was quite severely damaged.
Yeah.
Or a new one was procured. But
you just go for a £5 and just get another one.
Exactly, just go get another one. And they went again.
Yeah,
in the next year, so I don't know whether it was last year and they're going this year, or it was the year before and they went last year. I can't quite remember, but
no, that is
really
absolutely
cool.
Brilliant.
Take a very normal car, make it look cool.
Yes.
Put big cibbies on the front of it if it's a Favorit, and just go and do a cross-continental trip or race it at the Nürburgring.
Yeah. So.
Be Muppets, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. But by Skodas, the Favorit is a genuinely incredibly cool car.
I nearly bought a Felicia when I was at uni, and I decided that I needed, and I didn't really need it, something that was a little bit more cruisable, shall we say? Oh, that sounds a bit off to say that. Yeah, it sounds a bit odd that. But yeah, that maybe had a fifth gear and then maybe wasn't sat at over 4,000 revs on a motorway. And I nearly bought a flish it and it was like 500 quid and I should have done because it was a nice car.
Well, yeah, I think the Favorit for me, as a design being Bertone, is incredible. How I've got this far without referring to it as the baby cuntash, I will never know.
Was it Gandini that did it in particular?
I can't remember.
Claire is Bertone.
Because off the back of, I think it was in Classic Car Weekly, off the back of our thingy, someone wrote in to talk about if it was Gandini or someone else, and then they wrote back in the next week to apologise because they got it the wrong way around.
Okay, but
so
it was
there's about three series of Classic Car Weekly where they're debating if or not it was Gandini
so
or...
it was Bertone, definitely, but it's whether it's Marcello Gandini or not that's the different thing. It did the Citroen BX, which looks very much like the Favorit in a way.
Yeah, well,
so maybe
what I love about the Favorit is Skoda said to them, can you design us a 3-door hatchback and a saloon? And so they did that. And what Skoda did is went, good work. We're going to produce neither of those. We're going to do a 5-door hatchback, a 5-door wagon, a low-top van, a high-top van, an ambulance van, a pickup.
Yeah. And
so they did everything other than
a 3-door hatch and a 2-door saloon.
Basically every body they could possibly do on it
that wasn't
other than a 3-door
one
and a 5-door, 4-door saloon.
Oh, it's just the peculiarities of the late 80s and early 90s. But yeah, you should definitely go and buy stupid old cars and buy an old Skoda and take it across Europe or a Mini or something. So thank you very much for tuning into this ruinously long, like nearly an hour and 10 minutes edition of the podcast here at Manor Park Classics. Head over to our website and have a look at some of the lots that are coming for our auction. If this podcast goes out before the auction, if it doesn't, then look for our new auction.
This will need to be cut, or just there will be an auction somewhere.
There'll be an auction somewhere at some point, I suppose. Quite frankly, we're just
maybe
talking
here,
about
maybe elsewhere.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Take care, folks. I'll see you again soon.